It is our 100 subscriber special! Woo! So a few weeks ago I posted this TikTok on my experience as a pre-med engineering student. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much of a response to this video because last year when I was applying to medical school, most of the times I'd show up to my interviews and be one of like 2 engineering students that day there to interview, so I really didn't think this was going to be very relatable content. Boy, was I wrong! I heard back from so many of you saying that you were also engineering students or that you were pursuing some other non-traditional major, and I loved hearing your stories and answering your questions, so today I made this video to delve a little bit deeper into my experience as a non-traditional engineering pre-med student. We are going to be talking about GPA, extracurriculars, self-esteem, and more, so stay tuned. First I want to talk about GPA since that's the thing I by far get the most questions about. People say to me, but Alexa, to get into medical school you have to have a really high GPA, but engineering majors are notorious for having very low GPAs. Huh? I know. So the first thing I want to point out is that you do not have to have a perfect GPA to get into medical school. I know. What? I know. Now, perfect is not the same thing as very good. You do need a very good GPA to get into medical school, but it does not have to be perfect. Now, how the schools define very good, I couldn't tell you. I called, I reached out, I said, hey, I run a pre-med YouTube channel. Wanna like hook me up with some info on how all this works? Unfortunately, the admissions committee said that that was classified information and I did not have the clearance, so I can't help you there. But what I can give you is like a general idea of what this very good range might look like based on the schools that I applied to. So the median GPA at the schools that I applied to fell between a 3.5 and a 3.84. Alright, so now that we have our target, I want to talk about how did I actually go about getting that very good GPA? Because as we said before, aren't engineering majors notorious for having low GPAs? First, I want to explain where that notion comes from, because it is correct, but it is not as simple as just saying, oh, well, engineering's really hard, duh. Because the thing is, there are a lot of majors that are really hard, but there are not a lot of majors who have the sort of reputation that engineering has. So what's up here? The big secret here is that engineering as a discipline has a fundamentally different set of priorities than like most pre-med tracks. Allow me to explain. So when you sit down at your engineering job interview, what do you think's the one thing they're gonna ask you about? More than anything else, what is the one thing that they want to know? Think about it, I'll wait. It's your work experience. Not your GPA, not your extracurriculars, your work experience. And engineering professors, they're in on this little secret. And that drastically changes the way that they approach their grading process compared to other types of professors. For example, many professors in my department believed that students learned best through their own failures. So, they intentionally gave us more work than they knew we could handle. They intentionally tested us on concepts we hadn't fully mastered yet. Basically, they did everything in their power to set expectations that they knew we couldn't meet because they thought that they were teaching us how to be better engineers. Now, personally, I don't ascribe to this school of thought, but for most engineering students, it's not that detrimental. But you can see how, as a pre-med student, it was problematic. So, there are a few different ways to combat this. Number 1, show an upward trend in your GPA. Get those Bs, wear them with pride, but then follow them up with As. For example, I tried my best. I really did. But my first semester general chemistry course, I got a B. But that was not the end of the story for me. Because come second semester, what do you think I took? General Chemistry 2! And I got an A. And it is not because I magically showed up after winter break as a far superior and more intellectual individual. Nay. It is because I adapted my approach like a bona fide strategist. I started going to office hours. I was willing to ask for help when I needed it rather than insist on pushing forward on my own. I started reading my textbook. This is kind of a controversial thing. Some people really get a lot out of reading their textbook and some get literally nothing. I actually get a lot out of reading from the book. It allows me to synthesize the information and really take my time with it. So I started doing that again, like I did in high school. TLDR, do what you gotta do to get an A in part 2. Another strategy can be to focus your efforts towards the class that you're most likely to get an A in. Do not misunderstand me, okay? Listen carefully. I am not saying that 3 weeks into the semester you decide you're just destined to get a B and then you give up. No. But what I am saying is say it's finals week and you've got 2 tests to study for, and one of them you need a 92 to get an A in. Difficult but reasonable. Now let's say the other one you need 110 to get an A in. You're not getting that A, sis. Sorry. So perhaps you could study enough that you still maintain your B in that class. That way you can devote a few more hours to studying for the class that you actually probably can get an A in. It's all about allotting your time wisely because you have a seriously finite amount of time to work with in college. And finally, every little bit counts. I remember I took a class in my second year where the professor purposefully normalized everyone in the class to a B. Like, it wasn't that they were trying to, like, fail you out of the class, they just didn't want very many people to get an A. And most of the class I tottered between like a mid B and a high B, but I was never really able to like push it over the edge. And I had this one assignment that I did back in the very beginning of the semester that I didn't do so well on, but they uncharacteristically gave us the opportunity to redo the assignment. Well, this was an assignment that was worth like 1% of my grades, and it was gonna take a lot of time to redo. So I was like, at the time, it's not worth it. But towards the end of the class, I decided to go ahead and redo it because I did not want to wonder if that might have been the one thing that kept me from getting an A. Newsflash, it still did not bring me up to an A, but it brought me up to like an 89 point something something, and because my professor and all my TAs saw how hard I worked and how determined I was to get that A, they gave it to me anyway. So, no assignment is unimportant. Give your best. Take the extra credit whenever you can. If you get 1 point off of an exam that you deserved, go and get that 1 point. Even get half of a point, because if you're sitting at an 89.4 at the end of the year, you're gonna be kicking yourself for not getting that 1 point. Now, even if you do all of these things, you are still unlikely to get a 4.0. Sorry. So another question I get a lot is, are schools understanding of your GPA given the fact that you're an engineering student? Again, the official answer is, I don't know, I'm not on an admissions committee, yada yada yada. But I will give you my opinion and you can take it with a grain of salt. Medical schools aren't going to look at you from a different lens as everybody else. It's not like they're gonna say, oh, we have this one set of standards for engineering students and this one set of standards for everyone else. That's not how it works. So, what you gotta do is you gotta take that engineering angle and run with it. Do whatever you have to do to make your engineering accomplishments stand out. So whether it's a research topic that you're really passionate about, or maybe a senior design project that actually went really well, like whatever it is, take it and make it your own. Especially with class projects, like if you're in a design class and they ask you to, create a medical device, as a BME does, take it really seriously. Don't just look at it like, oh, I'm just trying to make it through this class. Try to look at it like, I want to make something that works to the best of my ability. This is huge. These design projects are going to be the one thing that you as an engineering student have that none of the other applicants are going to have. So this is really like your time to shine. That's not to say that every idea is going to be a good one. I certainly had my fair share of duds, but if you keep at it with that kind of attitude, hopefully you will find something that sticks. So speaking of all of the things we do to maintain our GPA, the second most common question I get is, so, what kind of effect does this academic pathway have on your social life? Bold of you to assume I have one. But seriously, sorry to be the one to break it to you, but I didn't really have much of a social life, at least not for the first 3 years that I was in school. Now, yes, things did kind of ease up in my 4th year because I was almost done with the application process. I had taken all of my prereqs, I had taken a lot of the really, really difficult engineering classes, so things were looking better. Of course, then we were plunged into a global pandemic, but yeah, so the first 3 years were pretty rough. The way I looked at it was like this. I heard a pastor one time talking about the pursuit of happiness, and he made the distinction between short-term happiness and long-term happiness, and he said that sometimes we have to sacrifice our short-term happiness in order to invest in our long-term happiness. And that's literally exactly how I looked at this whole situation. Honestly, I don't necessarily think that going through all the trouble of getting an engineering degree is really going to be useful for every single person that wants to pursue medicine. But I wanted a very particular career in medicine. I want to be a pediatric surgeon at a children's research hospital. I want to be that doctor that all the other doctors refer their really difficult cases to when they just can't figure out what's going on. In which case, my problem solving and innovation skills that I cultivated as an engineer are going to be so helpful. So, that was basically just a sacrifice that I was willing to make in order to get the career that I wanted. Now, my idea of a social life is a little bit different than a lot of people's. I didn't really party or drink or anything like that, so really my idea of having a good time was having a movie night with my friends or maybe going out to dinner, but even those things were really infrequent. I might have a couple of miscellaneous hours throughout the week to go on a quick donut run or play a game of cards, but there were a lot of times where my friends were hanging out and I had to say, I can't tonight. And that goes back to what I said about engineering as a discipline. Like, most of my friends were not going to medical school, they were going into the engineering industry, in which case they didn't have to be quite as strict as I was about their GPA. So there were many, many times when I had to be like, sorry, can't do movie night tonight, I've got a project to work on, or like, I think I'm just gonna eat in my room tonight, I've got some studying to do, you guys go ahead. Which was a bummer. Like, there's no way around it, that's not fun. So if you're looking for that like quintessential college experience where you like go out and seize the day and have all these great new experiences, this may not be the best pathway for you. But if you're really just looking at college as more of a stepping stone to another period of your life, then this might be more suited to you. If you've made it this far into the video, comment down below what stage in this process you're at. Like, are you in high school and you think you're interested in medicine, or are you in college trying to figure out like, should you change your major, or are you applying to medical school? Let me know down below so that I can make my future videos as tailor-made to your needs as possible. Thank you, back to the show. Okay, now I want to talk about extracurriculars. I'm not going to go over every single activity that you need for medical school right now. I do have a video coming out on that very soon though, so stay tuned. But for today, I'm just going to talk about those things that are kind of specific opportunities available to engineering students. So mainly that means I'm going to be talking about research. Engineering majors have the coolest research opportunities. So I think the thing that makes this really stand out in my mind is the fact that most research projects are like several steps removed from the work that they're actually doing. So for example, if you're trying to cure cancer, you're not actually working with cancer patients, you're looking at a microscope, you're studying cells, and you're looking at pharmaceutical compounds, which is really cool. But for me, I really like to come out of a project with like a tangible solution and something that like I know can immediately go out and help somebody. And that's exactly what engineering research is all about. It's about providing solutions. So for example, my research project was on congenital heart defects in pediatric patients. So not only did I get to meet some of the kids living with this condition through my volunteer hours, but I got to interact with surgeons who are like actually working on these cases every single day. And I got to make like a direct impact on how they were treating their patients, which was just like the coolest thing ever. And with a research project like that, you can show medical schools that you haven't just learned the material, but like you actually took it and you applied it to something and used it to actually help people. Which if that's not doctor material, I don't know what is. Okay, so now let's take a step back, take a deep breath, because we're gonna talk about self-esteem and confidence. You are going to have to be really confident in your decision if this is the type of pathway that you decide to pursue, because there's going to be a lot of people who just don't get the connection. They don't understand why, if you want to go to medical school, you would go and get a degree in engineering. Like there's a disconnect there, and that's totally fine. It's not something that necessarily makes sense right off the bat. If your advisor or your professor or your friends or your colleagues or whoever it is doesn't really get what you're doing, don't lose hope. There were definitely people in my life who didn't fully understand what I was doing when I decided to major in engineering, and that's okay. That's really why I'm here today, because there were a lot of you who responded to my TikTok videos saying like, thank you so much for putting this out there, because I honestly had no idea if I was making a good decision or if anybody else out there did this sort of thing. If you are a pre-med engineer, you can do it, okay? You don't have to do it. If you get halfway in and you decide, this was a terrible decision for me personally, get out. Don't give yourself a hard time. Don't drag it out to see if you can make it through. Just switch majors. So just try not to focus on other people's opinions too much. And that's really good advice just in general. Like, don't focus so much on what other people are doing, because engineering is very competitive. Being a pre-med is also very competitive. So when you slap those two things together, it's not always pretty. And you're gonna be seriously tempted to look at what all of your peers are doing and be like, oh my goodness, look at her volunteering project, oh my goodness, look at his research project, and feel bad about yourself. You cannot let other people's accomplishments make your successes feel less important. You are smart, you are successful, and by the end of this, you are gonna have so many cool things to talk about in your essays and interviews. So for now, just put those blinders on and focus on you. Alright, that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! I never actually let that breath out.